Ooh, that was a hard slam. Good afternoon. Yes, I got excited. It is 12:30, and we are getting ready to start our Public Safety Committee. And what's next?
We have a presentation
Like we have
from the police department.
on our agenda, we have our committee items, the presentations and updates by the police department regarding monthly crime statistics and overdoses.
All right, thank you very much, Chairperson Knight, committee members, Mayor, boss. Okay. So it's January, new set of statistics and data to look at for the year. We are looking at homicide totals now from 2023. Unfortunately, what we're not talking about is a murder in 2024, and we hope to not have to talk about that. Because we have not seen a level of violence so far this year, which is excellent. Love to take credit for it, but of course a lot of that has to do with the weather. As you can see, 2023, we did see an uptake from the past 2 years, overshadowed by the historic levels in 2020. I love to brag about our detective unit exceeding the national average of clearances for murders by far. As you see, we've solved 12 of the 24 murders. Several others are in prosecutorial review, so that puts us at 50% so far from 2023. Of course, that rate will go up. Generally, we report to the FBI in April, so those numbers aren't official till later in the year, but still doing excellent work. Speaking of excellent work, the patrol officers on the street, 449 illegally possessed weapons totally recovered in 2023. And if you think about arresting an individual who's in possession of a illegal firearm, that is a very dangerous situation. So the fact that we're not talking about more deadly force encounters, more gun violence is a testament to the excellent professional work that the officers on the street are doing. Auto theft totals, some good news for 23. We've fallen from the spike in 22 that we saw with the Kia and Hyundai craze. A lot of that has to do with enforcement, and of course a lot has to do with education of the public too, as well as cooperation with the auto companies themselves. And a better illustration here, you see the spike back in June of 2022 when the Kia and Hyundai theft craze went viral on social media, et cetera. We didn't see that spike in the summer of 23, and indeed have seen it continuously drop over time, and hope that it continues to head in that direction. Aggravated assaults, while down over the last few years, not very significantly, so no notable trends, but in a positive trend, you will see that robbery totals continue to go down. And again, that's you can credit excellent detective work, enforcement, but also cooperation, especially with businesses that see that adding video surveillance systems and cooperating more with investigations and simply not tolerating any sort of robberies has made a very positive impact, and we hope to keep that trend going. One thing that we don't talk about enough, it's not necessarily seen in a criminal context, is the fentanyl crisis and how it impacts our cities in 2020, how it impacts our city. In 2023, we lost 39 individuals to death by accidental drug overdose. Now that number, of course, could be much higher, but for the fact that back before I got here, 2016, RED Project, which is a group that we still partner with on some of their initiatives, supplied Narcan, which is the common name for naloxone, nasally distributed medication to individuals experiencing drug overdose, to all of our police officers. So all of our patrol officers carry Narcan with them. You see, we used it about 150 times in response to overdose calls last year. And so that number of 39, while tragic, could be much higher. We already this year, even though it's been slow and very snowy out, 7 doses of Narcan. Sadly, we have already lost 5 individuals to overdose. Now, aside from the proactive use of Narcan, there's one other thing that the Grand Rapids Police Department does very well, and in a way that we really want to broadcast out, that if you are a drug dealer, Grand Rapids is not where you want to be peddling your deadly drugs, is that anytime we do respond to a fatal overdose, 39 times last year, we get a full response from our vice detectives. And the idea of assigning detectives to actually go out and respond and do a full investigation of a accidental drug overdose is twofold. Number one is we want to make sure that if there's a way to identify where this substance is, if it's a so-called bad batch of fentanyl-laced drugs or fentanyl itself, that we want to make sure that it's not something that we end up where other cities have seen multiple individuals die, sometimes on the very same day, of drug overdoses from a bad batch of fentanyl-laced substance or fentanyl itself. And the other is we want to go after the drug dealers. We want to go after the individuals who are selling in 2023 39 doses of deadly substances to the people in Grand Rapids. And just to illustrate how one example case, a woman named Elaine Christensen died a few years ago, and our vice detectives did a thorough job. And this is how we do it with every case if we can. Not only did we identify the individual who provided her the drugs, we identified the individual who sold him the drugs, and then we identified the individual who sold him the drugs. So we have 3 levels of dealers there, and our vice detectives are nothing if not professional and tenacious in their efforts. We understand the complexities of substance addiction, but I have very little sympathy for individuals profiting off what oftentimes is a deadly criminal endeavor here. So just for the legal side of things, enhanced felony, there's a felony for selling illegal substances, but if your sale of an illegal substance results in death, it is a very enhanced felony called the delivery of a controlled substance causing death. It's a 20-year felony, and that is what our detectives are seeking when we respond to an overdose case. Even if we don't end up getting that, the efforts that the detectives put in the investigation of the crime will be made known to the judge when the seller is brought to the court, and the judge can take the entire circumstances, including the death of an individual, into consideration when charging or when sentencing just for the delivery of the controlled substance less than death. So very tenacious. They do an excellent job, and it's not something that every city is good at doing. Our vice team is exceptional, and something I wanted to talk about today. And that's it, but happy to answer any questions.
Colleagues?
Thank you, Chief. I was just curious, and I'm very appreciative of the report and all of the work of the department. How many doses of Narcan are on patrol cars at any given time? Is that limited in any way?
It's fortunately, and it's been since 2016, the RED Project supplies us free of charge with Narcan doses. I don't know how much they cost, but obviously they don't cost nothing. So it's something and they keep us refilled every time we use it. They give us more. So we have boxes of them. They're administered nasally. You can buy them online. They're fortunately very safe to use. Remember when this started popping up in the criminal justice world, I was working in a different jurisdiction. There was concern about liability because we're not doctors, we're not even nurses. So how can we be administrating medicine? But it is very safe that even if a police officer wrongly identifies an individual not experiencing an overdose, but believes they are experiencing an overdose, there's no harm in distributing these. So we have literally every police officer who's responding to calls for service is equipped with Narcan, and we make sure we have plenty on hand. And if ever a time comes when the RED Project stops providing us, we'll certainly come before this body asking for a little bit more money to make sure that we don't stop doing this.
Thank you.
Again, great work. Glad that resource is available. Do you track, if you administer Narcan to an individual on multiple occasions, do you guys track the end user of where that goes? Are there people that have been saved multiple times?
We do have individuals saved multiple times. A little bit, it could go into our, I'm forgetting the acronym for high-end users, the social workers that we have, and we just started our another full-time social worker yesterday, so kind of off track, but that's a good thing. So we do have the ability to track the high users of this. So if an individual is administered Narcan multiple times, we don't necessarily have like a flag system set up where if they go X amount of times, there's an alert or anything. But through our co-response team, we do have the capacity to actually proactively see what else can we be doing for this person, so it doesn't take a 911 call to respond. That's the end goal.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you for that, Chief. I'm wondering if we've seen a higher amount of just fentanyl flooding into our community as opposed to fentanyl-laced other products that
Yep.
people might be using, and if those are the ones that people tend to be overdosing more on as opposed to,
Yes.
you know what I mean, the pure.
The short answer is yes, and it's, or if we're talking 10 years ago, or I guess slightly more, maybe 8 or so, when fentanyl just started to pop up across the country, it was always fentanyl-laced heroin, fentanyl-laced something else. And now it's come to pass that a lot of times it is simply fentanyl. Oftentimes the pills are counterfeited to look like Percocet, to look like Vicodin. There's no Percocet or Vicodin. It is simply fentanyl. And of course, these aren't being created. They're not FDA approved. They're not being created by true pharmacists. So oftentimes they get the dosage wrong, whether intentionally or accidentally, so that we have individuals that are overdosing on just fentanyl. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate this, especially even after going on that safety tour not too long ago and really being able to see what's going on in the different quadrants of our community, but also hoping to be able to continue to highlight some of the good stuff that police do in the community and that our community can connect with those things as opposed to hearing all the negatives. So we appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right. Thank you. Next on our agenda is an update from our fire department, and I'm going to hand this over to our city manager, Mr. Mark Washington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add to the closing comments of the chief and the great work they do in saving lives, and over 100 lives that were saved by using Narcan. Our first responders in the fire department are also equipped to respond similarly and also have Narcan as well. But this item, I want to begin by thanking all the great city employees who did a tremendous job over the past week in terms of preparing for severe weather. And it was through a lot of work, a lot of planning work, preparedness work. You'll hear that from our emergency manager, Allison Ferroli. But there are several employees that did not get the benefit of having a holiday weekend and worked double shifts and throughout the weekend and the holiday itself. And so I'm forever grateful for that kind of public service, and you'll see some of the great work that'll be recognized in the presentation. So I'll turn it over to Mrs. Ferroli, who has also done an outstanding job as our emergency manager since being here in Grand Rapids.
All right. Thank you, City Manager, and good afternoon, Commissioners. So I want to give an update on our operations that we put together in response to what was called Winter Storm Jerry, which was over the holiday weekend, January 12th through the 15th. And there's a lot of photos in here because I think the one thing that goes into what we do is we really look a lot at the forecasts and kind of what is our risk look like. And this is actually an image here of what one of the forecast images look like for Grand Rapids. And we were dead center in one of the high risk zones in regards to what we were anticipating from Winter Storm Jerry. A couple of things that we do early on the week leading up to the weekend is have a lot of conversations with the National Weather Service. And that's something that I do just looking at insights and trying to plan, knowing that it was a holiday weekend. There was a lot of things going on and trying to anticipate what they were expecting as far as this winter storm. Obviously, we live in Michigan. Winter is a thing here. This is normal. But I wanted to see what were they looking as far as concerns go that we need to do to make sure that our community members stayed safe? So a lot of things go into this. We're looking at impacts with significant snow accumulation over a short amount of time. With that mixed in with strong wind gusts, they were anticipating wind gusts of 45 miles per hour and higher for the weekend, which would then turn into what we would call blizzard-like conditions, which would then create whiteout conditions on the roads and just where visibility is really not there. Then with the high wind and the snow accumulation, then obviously the wet snow that we were receiving leading up to that weekend, there was a lot of concern around widespread power outages in our community. And then looking past the storm, we were anticipating, as we have been experiencing, prolonged freezing temperatures and lake effect snow. So even though this storm was coming, we were looking at impacts and concerns after the storm went through. And so that was really a big part of our decision making and what our level of risk looked like. I do want to also bring attention to this photo. As I was putting this together, the Weather Service put out a link on an imaging on what we actually got from just that weekend. And as you can see here, we got close to up to 30 inches of snow in that weekend. And that does not include the amount of snow we received in the week leading up to that weekend. So we did receive a lot of snow for that. So with all of that information and also looking at what was planned in our community for the weekend, it was a holiday weekend. There was a lot of events happening, pretty much a full calendar of things happening here in downtown Grand Rapids. And so with, again, all of that in mind, it was decided that we needed to activate a level 1, which is the lowest level. It's 3 levels that's written in our emergency operations plan of our emergency operations center and having that activated. We did a lot of pre-planning, really began Wednesday, January 10th, and leading up to actually activating a physical EOC on Friday in the afternoon. So what level 1 monitoring level activation looks like, it's a small contingent of folks in the room. And we, from the emergency management standpoint, look at, obviously we want to have our representation from our city manager's office through what's called the policy group, have representation from a public information officer, so from our communications department, and then specific operations focus to make sure that we are able to provide high-level public safety response to our community. And that included the fire department, the police department, Public Works, Mobile GR and Traffic Safety, and then also Community Services. We also had our Region 6 coordinator for the State Emergency Management Homeland Security Division represented, because that is our direct liaison to the state if we have any needs that we are unable to meet. If during this storm we have that direct connection. So a lot of us were there. It was a small group. I'd say about 10 of us, not even, maybe 8 to 10 of us that were there from Friday afternoon through Saturday afternoon, and really monitoring the impacts of this storm. So we're constantly looking at weather impacts of the power outages. What do our roads look like? What type of numbers of traffic accidents are we looking at? Things like that, because we want to make sure folks are still staying safe, especially since we have those events happening in our community. We then eventually, due to low impacts and low numbers of incidents we are facing, which is great, we transitioned to virtual operations Saturday afternoon as we went through the rest of the weekend. We officially closed our Emergency Operations Center operations Monday afternoon on January 15th. So let's talk a little bit about the storm-related operations. A lot of things go into this in the planning aspect of it. Multiple departments upstaffed to make sure, again, that we are able to give the high quality of public service to our community members. The fire department upstaffed their suppression units, where we added what's called B units to support the plowing and other transportation-related issues around our fire trucks and engines, and making sure that we're able to get to calls. Public Public Works was fully activated in regards to their plowing operations. We also had a lot of coordination and communication with consumers and understanding what their impacts look like. And thankfully, we actually had really low numbers of power outages, but we continued to have that communication just to make sure that when things do hit, we had understanding of what restoration numbers look like or times look like for that. Mobile GR did a lot of work in regards to making sure that our off-street parking division was helping with snow and ice removal. Again, because we were having a lot of special events still happening in our community, we want to make sure folks are able to get in and out of parking structures and safely moving around the community on Friday and Saturday night. And then lastly, we were monitoring the shelter bed capacity within our Mel Trotter and Degage shelters and making sure we had places for folks to take shelter at night and also to stay warm. And then also ensure that we were helping to secure volunteers to help support those operations and make sure that we had no issues around that. And everything went great and no issues stemmed from that either. With all of this, things went really well and smoothly, which is the best type of emergency operations center we want to have. That is why we plan. That's why we lean in and we do this work. We do a lot of promotion out to the community in regards to how we need to take this seriously, what the reports are looking like, what the forecasts are showing, so that we can really encourage folks to stay home, because that's the best option for folks to be able to stay safe. We did get a lot of media inquiries and a lot of great positive reporting here in Grand Rapids, locally and nationally. So myself, I did a lot of interviews with local and national news in regards to what we are doing to plan and prepare for the impacts of the storm. Our Public Works Department got a lot of attention locally to get insight into what goes into being a plow truck driver and those operations look like, and why it's important for our community members to adhere to certain things like odd and even parking and things like that. I will say the Weather Channel was here all weekend long. They were on the Blue Bridge probably from early mornings of the morning until late in the evening. Talked a lot about the Grand Rapids and really talked about the world of winter and that special event that was starting that weekend. So we got a lot of great press around that. And so yes, we had a storm, but I think we had a lot of good stuff come out of this in regards to why Grand Rapids is great. So with that, I want to take a pause. I want to have John Gorney from Public Works come up here. We want to take a moment to recognize a few of our plow truck drivers who did a great work during that weekend. So I'm going to pause and I'm going to turn over to John to come up here for a moment.
All right, thank you, Allison. Good afternoon, commissioners, mayor, city manager, board members. It is a pleasure for us to be here today and to highlight some of the work that we did. We have an exceptional team in the Public Works Department. Everybody was dedicated. Everybody was here. We had no staffing issues. We dealt with some equipment issues, but overall we made it through 30+ inches of snow in 11-ish days. So fantastic job by everybody. So with me today are some of our equipment operators, crew leader, and maintenance workers. So we have Miss Danielle Lyle, Miss Lanita Godwin, we have Kay Weta, and Bob Perkins with me. So part of our staff, just want to highlight the work that they did and thank them. And then we'll be here for any questions that you have for us specifically. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Sean. I now want to turn over to Deputy Chief of Operations for the Fire Department, Jack Johnson. We did have a hazmat incident that did occur in the middle of the storm. Again, because of our work, we were able to get this under control, but I'm going to turn over to Deputy Chief Johnson to give some more details of what went into this to ensure that we protected our community.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Mr. Manager, esteemed citizen members. Just real quick, that morning at 4 a.m., so at the height of the storm, at the CSX rail yard at the intersection of Freeman and Hall, apparently I can't use subtitles. Gotcha. at you. So a quick incident overview. Freeman Near Hall, 2 locomotive train in their rail yard about 100 yards away from Plaster Creek, derails. So when I heard this, I was like, whoa, we had a train derailment, right? And I'm like, that's not good. But apparently they have just single track derailments quite a bit out there, so it's not outside of the norm. The problem with this one is one of the knuckles of the tracks came loose and split the diesel tank of the locomotive. They had just finished fueling up everything they had in the yard, which is what we do too when we move into these storms. Like I make sure, all the fire engines and trucks are fueled up, our units are fueled up, everything's fueled up. Well, they do the same thing. So 4 a.m., we had this derailment and hit that tank. So our crews got there within 4 minutes. They attempted to use a couple different techniques. One of it's called plug and dike. It's basically like a wax ring that you use for a toilet, and they slap it up on there and hope that it'll plug the hole. It's a 5-inch hole. 3,400 gallons of diesel fuel has a lot of what's called head pressure, right? And if you've ever felt diesel, it's like half gas, half oil. It's pretty slick. Well, it won't stick. So they constructed what's basically a hydrocarbon patch. So we have these big patches that we put over them. They ran some bungee straps around, ratchet strapped it down, and slowed the leak. So at this point, we've got about 300 gallons of diesel fuel on the ground in the rail yard. Once they did that, they put out Visqueen tarp to catch the product below. We have a specialized pump on the hazmat. It's called a Pate pump. They started offloading that into drums. In the meantime, the rail yard has, people they utilize when this happens. If they have a fuel spill, they have a chemical spill, they called them. This company's out of Howell. They said, yeah, we're not coming. Railway was like, what do you mean you're not coming? We pay you. We contract with you. Yeah, it's snowing. Luckily, the EOC is open right now because of the storm. Our crews called back to the EOC that night and said, hey, we need some help. Well, right around the corner is a company called Set Environmental, which also deals with that type of spill stuff. They were there within an hour, relieved my crews. All in all, there was about 600 gallons spilled into the ground. None of it got into the groundwater. They planned for that, so they scoop that soil out and recycle it. We saved about 100 gallons, Grand Rapids did. Our hazmat team pumping that off, as well as the stuff that spilled on the ground. We caught that, and then Set was able to maintain the leak. And again, if it wasn't for that EOC being activated at that point in time, it might have, delayed our response getting set there. We would have caught the fuel. We would have just had to work a little bit harder to make sure we didn't get in the ground. So again, no economic impacts whatsoever from that. And again, we were able to, save the day again. Just real quick about my hazmat team. We are the only FEMA Type 3 hazmat team in the state of Michigan. Type 3 means we can handle unknown substances. So if there's a puddle of something on the ground, we can identify it and we can mitigate it. We're the only validated team in Michigan that is owned by one municipality. So you get on the east side and there are a lot of smaller cities and departments that all kind of throw members together to make a hazmat team. We're the only team in the state that is all Grand Rapids owned. So you own them, they're yours. They're the best in the state. So, any questions?
We're going to do questions at the end.
Oh, sorry. We're going to do questions at the end.
Thanks, Jack. Just want to wrap it up with that. So overall, everything went really well in regards to our response to Winter Storm Jerry. And again, this really shows the power of preparedness. There's a lot of things that go into preparedness. It is the work of that coordination behind the scenes between myself and other departments, leaning into activating an emergency operations center so we have the right people at the table to make quick decisions and get resources allocated when necessary. But also the work that Allison Donovan, the emergency management specialist, and our communications team does in regards to getting the word out to our community and getting folks to understand what they need to do to stay prepared and to be able to handle incidents or severe weather like Winter Storm Jerry. So through all this, because of the power of preparedness and being able to do the work that is really the basis of emergency management, no major injuries were identified through this, no impacts on critical infrastructure. We we had minimal power outages and minimal traffic incidents in the city of Grand Rapids through this storm. So with that, it is time for questions if there is any. But overall, this is really what it's about when it comes to coordination, collaboration, and communication, and being able to handle these big incidents that could potentially bring major impacts to our city. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I don't know when winter storms started getting named, but obviously I've missed something from A to G. So I appreciate all the work that was done during this storm. I was one of the people involved with an event happening downtown during that time, so I was glad that the streets were passable and people were able to get where they needed to get. It wasn't a lot of people out, but there were a few out there, so I really appreciate that, and especially the work that goes into protecting our unhoused population and making sure they're safe. That was something that was heavy on my mind, and I asked a few questions about that because that's a huge concern. It was really cold outside, and then also the work that was done by our fire department. I appreciate the work that you all do. I'm a little biased in that space, but I appreciate everything that you've done, especially to protect that particular piece of property over there by Plaster Creek, is that's a heavy point in our community and a lot of conversation around what's being done to protect that area. So thank you for that. Colleagues, any other questions, comments?
This was very enlightening. I didn't know anything about how you all prepared, and it's really remarkable and it's wonderful, and the community needs to know about this, So I heard nothing but great things about the roads. Everybody was so impressed that the roads were so passable and plowed, and our fire department is always tremendous and amazing. So thank you for doing such a great job, everybody.
I just have one question. In your skill of identifying unknown chemicals or whatever it might be, could you guys come over to my house when my grandkids are there?
It's called a Rogaku is the name of the monitor, and wow, we can tell which end it came out of.
Well, thank you. Looks like that's everything. Anybody have any other questions? All right. Thank you very much for that and for putting that together for us. We really appreciate the information. Last up, we have our safety concerns regarding wildlife in the city of Grand Rapids, and I will turn that over to City Manager once again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a continued discussion. We agreed at last Public Safety Committee to hopefully come back with an update from community partners that we're collaborating with. And unfortunately, there is a future meeting that will take place that will allow us to speak more informatively about it. I know we have citizens who came here today to hear this specific update, so I'll ask Mr. Hurt to give us a high-level overview, and then I think we have a commitment at the next public safety meeting to have neighboring partners, regional partners, and experts to come and speak to this group.
Yeah, that's correct, sir. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I did provide a written update in the packet for you. Back on December 20th, I did meet with the Department of Natural Resources, the USDA Wildlife Services, and was joined by representatives from the City of Walker and the City of Kentwood as we start talking about this not only as a City of Grand Rapids situation that we want to address, but also from a regional perspective. We've extended discussions with Grand Valley State University, and we're also having conversations now with Kent County Road Commission as they have a vested interest in this well. The number of deer carcasses that they pick up throughout the entire county was staggering, and they've showed me some numbers, and that's really what we learned when we met with the DNR and the USDA was we needed to gather more information, more data, and trends that are happening within our community and see how we can address that going forward. And as the manager mentioned, we have a meeting with the Metro 6, which is the 6 cities, to talk more about this and see what others have interest in participating. But it really goes beyond the boundaries of the city of Grand Rapids. A deer doesn't understand when you get to the city limits, you have to stop. They cross boundaries, they're into the townships. So we're looking at this from a collaborative standpoint, trying to address it and come back to you at your February meeting with some additional details. Perhaps some recommendations, but we're going to have more information for you to look at in terms of what options we have available to us as a community, and how do we look at this from a regional perspective. But at this time, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Colleagues, any questions?
No, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I just want to say thanks to James for working with our Metro 6 mayors and the county, and I couldn't agree more. This isn't just a one-city issue, and I think a more aligned approach between all of us is a better approach. So thanks. Thanks for
You're welcome.
coming to the last meeting and really working with them.
I will also add, in talking with the DNR, there's other conversations happening throughout the state. I'm hearing things in the Detroit area. I'm hearing things in other parts of the state. And the DNR, if you saw recently, was convening some stakeholder groups to talk about this topic, not only in the UP, but also in the Lower Peninsula. So I think it's gathering some attention around the entire state.
Yeah.
So I wanted to pass that along, too.
I also had a conversation with the DNR,
Okay.
old friend of ours, about this. And the one aspect that, because it's not just cities, it's everywhere. There's less hunters, there's just population growth everywhere. And the one group we talked about, and I did have a conversation about this, was Native American groups. All over the country now, Native American groups are reclaiming their rightful claim to wild game or whatever it might be, food sources, anything else. And so I found out that not only is there an effort to do that in the middle west, in the plains areas, but they're interested in looking at other places to go. And apparently there's a department in the federal government that is now looking at processing meat, because that's expensive to process all this meat, even if you could capture it. And so they're looking at those kind of issues to be run by Native groups or whatever. So there's a lot of little things going on over there that might be a little bit under the surface. So I'd be glad to help out any way I can.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Hurt, for your work on this. And I know this conversation is near and dear to many people in our community, so hopefully we can find some good solutions. There's so many pieces, there's so many things that are a cause of this, but I think we can figure it out. We've got enough smart brains around the table that can help us out with this. All right. Anything else?
Yeah, sure. For the resident came, I asked if Mr. Hurt will visit with our resident that came specifically to talk about this issue. Happened to see her in the elevator on the way up. Make sure she came to provide some perspective on deer population management. And after we adjourn, those drivers and those who were part of the emergency response, if you don't mind, I would love for them to take a picture with the Public Safety Committee before you all leave.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. It's 1:07, and we are adjourned.